All right, so this next judge story is pretty crazy. It's much different than all the other judge stories. There's multiple characters, and it is also female driven. It's a woman power story, which is super cool to have in the Bible. And it is a really heavy story, so it's like, watch out. But Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth with Barak. So the story is Deborah's the prophet for Israel, and the head general is Barak, and they are under control of King Jabin, a Canaanite. So we'll start with King Jabin. That's really interesting. So in Joshua 11:10, when Israelites first got into the Promised Land, a bunch of the Canaanite giant kings heard, they didn't like it, and then they brought war. One of those was King Jabin of Hazor. Now, specifically, Hazor, before time, was the head of all those kingdoms. So that was a very significant spot, probably home base, kingdom, whatever the case. So for King Jabin in the Deborah story, he is King Jabin of Canaan who reigned in Hazor. So same name. The original King Jabin perished in Joshua. So it is either a line of his, or Jabin may have been a title in some fashion. It didn't get translated, through Hebrew. But it goes to the significance of this gentleman, how they Israelites came in, conquered, but then Canaanite brought back Hazor and made it a home base. Now his general, Sisera, major part in this story. The story goes that he had thousands of chariots, even 900 of iron, which this was way before the David story, which the David story brings in the Bronze Age to the Iron Age. So the fact that they had that much iron chariots back then is way more significant detail than just iron chariots, clearly. Now, Sisera is a Hittite verb that means to meditate. Hittites, we know from the Promised Land conquest, are a line of giants, which is really interesting because mainstream would have us believe that giants were just dumb Neanderthal, monsters. But this is a general over a monster army. So got some thinking. So it kind of puts it more in perspective that they were just really big people. So there's not a lot on Deborah, but I did find something that's kind of interesting. I don't think it goes anywhere, but it is really cool. So it's Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth. But in Hebrew, that is Eshevat of Lapidoth. Eshevat generally means woman of. It can mean wife of, but generally it's woman of. And Lapidoth translates as fire. So wouldn't it be wild if she was the woman of fire, and that was like her significant role? Again, I don't know if that goes anywhere, but I just thought that was kind of cool. Now, her general, Barak. So I got to break this down a little bit for this to make more sense. The tribe of Israel is comprised of 12 individual tribes. They got into the Promised Land. Some did good, some did bad. And a bunch of my old other videos touch base on different tribes. Specifically, we're going to talk about Naphtali and Zebulon. So in Judges, there's two different keys to who these guys are. Judges 130 and 133. So 130, neither did Zebulun drive out the inhabitants of Kitron, nor the inhabitants of Nahal, but the Canaanites dwelt among them and became tributaries. And then 133, same thing, neither did Naphtali drive out the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh, nor the inhabitants of Beth Anath, but dwelt among the Canaanites. So again, some tribes got in and did good. You got Judah, and then you got some tribes like Benjamin, Naphtali, and Zebulun that commingled, coexisted. And then you start seeing a lot of men of war around this time. So what that kind of suggests to me, at least, is that there was, with the commingling, that they were trying to build an army of these brutes, the brute strengths. Everybody was getting a role for their, what they could do, basically. Now, the significance of that is Deborah, being the prophetess, she gets the word from God to go in, and it's time to fight Sisera and King Jabin. So she gives the message to Barak. And Barak, the general, kind of chickens out a little bit and says, well, I'll go if you go. So she tells him, fine, but this battle will not be won by your hands. It'll be won by the hands of a woman. The cool part is you get the idea that it's going to be her. That's why she's saying it, but it's not. So it's like this crazy twist at the end of the story. And before we get there, she tells Barak to draw 10,000 men of the children of Naphtali and the children of Zebulun. So she gets the word to pull an army from Zebulun and Naphtali specifically, men of war, to go and fight King Jabin. So again, an overall pattern, if you will, with the judges is these are people with specific abilities. They're getting tapped to help Israel, to protect Israel. So that's why these guys are specifically tapped. And that's why we get the detail at the beginning to give us an idea of who they are and that they're more than just normal, pure blood humans. So now here's the twist. Heber the Kenite, which was of the children of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, had severed himself from the Kenites and pitched his tent onto the plain of Zanim, which is by Kadesh. The Kenites, in Genesis 15:19, way before the Promised Land conquest, when it was first told to Abram, this is what's going to happen, there were 3 tribes that were mentioned that were really bad and had to go. The Kenites, the Kenizzites, and the Cadmonites. Now, the Kenites, through translation, is people of the spear. So these are battle-driven, nasty nomads, and needed to be driven out. But of course, free will is everything. So we find out later that there were people leaving the Kenite tribes, which is kind of a funny part of the story. So in the story, King Jabin and Sisera are getting their butts kicked and they're running. So Sisera tries to run and hide. He sees the wife of Heber, the Kenite, and assumes, hey, he parted from the Kenites. He's a good guy. I can trust him. So he goes to Heber's wife, Jael. Jael, translated, means mountain goat. So, imagination run wild. But he goes to Sisera. Sisera goes to Jael and says, please hide me. Hide me from all this mess that's going down. So she says, come on in, lay on down. And he asks for something to drink. She gives him some milk. As he falls asleep, she takes a tent peg, whap, through the cranium, takes him out. So that's the twist at the end, that the battle was won by a female's hands, which is super, super awesome. Super awesome. But it's crazy that this story, there's not a lot on Deborah, and this is a major, major battle. But then there's an entire section dedicated to Deborah's song, which is super significant. And I've mentioned that in a different Judge video. But it is basically like it's a song for the battle. It's a song of celebration, and it is super deep, and it's really goes into all these details. So it just kind of backs. She had a higher role, that this was just a really major, major battle that took place. So here we got Judge story. We got 4 major people, and then a giant army of these men of war. We've got some Canaanite giants. We got some Hittite giants. We've got Kenizzite. Would suggest that they're giants. So they're just kind of hybrid humans. More animal, more beastly. And then woman power story. I mean, come on.